Hello, I'm Mike Jones, and today I'm going to demonstrate how to make a donut cutter. It's a 5-piece assembly. We have the main outside assembly. Then we have a little knob for the pusher block. We have a push rod, a little push plate. We have the cutter piece for the center hole, and then the inside of the is for the main cutting on the outside of the donut. I first started out making a biscuit cutter. As you can see, it's a lot simpler, but it's basically a lot of the same operations will be done on it to make the donut cutter. Donut cutter, you see, has a pocket to hold that center cutter. We'll start out by roughing out a cherry block. It's a wild cherry. It's probably been dry for a good 5 years. I hauled a log home from a cherry tree in a person's backyard that wanted to get rid of it. And one of the main reasons he wanted to get rid of it because it was covered with poison ivy vines. And being sort of crazy guy, I thought, I'll be able to handle that, even though I'm allergic to poison ivy. But I found out that after 2 or 3 days of cutting the log up and hauling it home, even stripping the vines off and putting them in recycling bags, it was more than my system could handle. So in about 4 days, I was covered with poison ivy, which didn't make my wife too happy. But the block is that I'm starting with is approximately 7 inches long, and it's about 3.5 to 4 inches diameter. And as you see, it's pretty rough. So we're going to rough it down to a round piece. And at this time, I'm going to put a face shield on because there could be some little pieces fall off or come flying off. I'm running about 800 RPM, which is a good speed for a rough block this time. This is a large roughing gouge, which handles taking this block down pretty good. Cherry wood is a good wood for making kitchen items like spoons and this cookie cutter. It's a close grain wood. Close grain woods are good to use because they finish well and they won't absorb food particles as bad as some other woods like oak. Of course, pear and apple, those are well used woods for kitchenware. Now I'm going to put a dovetail on the end here. It's I'm going to transfer it to a chuck here in a few minutes. I'm going to check the dimension one more time. Shooting for 2 1/4 or 2" 200. Transfer it to a chuck. I like to tighten it up at least twice on different sides of the chuck to make sure it's got a good grip on it. I'm going to face the other end off now. I'm going to saw the end on off because it seems to be jerking a little bit on a small knot. Tighten it up one more time here. This point I'm going to put a 3/8 hole in the end, about 1 inch deep, and that will allow me to do the hog out on the end.
How deep did you go?
About 900.
900.
Yeah.
Sounds like a machinist talk.
Yeah. I was one of those for 30 years. A pocket, finished pocket's about 1 inch. I'm going to do most of the roughing out of this with a 3/8 or 1/2 inch. Sorry about that. This is a Sorby, and it seems to work real well on this type of cutting. I've relieved the back a little bit so I don't lift it up if I get in there too far. Take it out of the portion there a bit to 2.5. You have one hand. Probably less chance of pulling it out of your chuck because you'll have all down the floor straight in. Check dimension here. About 2.5, 6. And we're right at 800 deep. Oh, I see what's grabbing me. Another little hidden knot in there. I thought it was just me. I had help there. Now I'm going to drill a 1/4-inch hole clear through the part. And then I'll be able to put a center in here to hold the assembly while I'm roughing out the outside. I'm using the 6-inch standard drill bit. I'm just feeding it in by hand without using the crank. 'Cause lots of times this turns out to be a straighter, smoother hole than if you just crank. You can do it either way. You want to keep feeding it in and out so you don't get bound up on your bit. Now we're going to switch to a live center. And I'm going to make a couple marks to guide me. One for this face here, one for the other side of the pocket, and then one for the top, which is also the handle, of course. Okay, back to the sorbet, 1/2 inch. eyeball check here. Looks like we're going about where we want. Excuse me. Use the parting tool to put a groove here at the finish end. Do a little check here on the example. Get pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and put the pocket in. Makes it a little easier by putting the pocket in there with a Forstner bit to make the small cutting portion of the tool to fit. Take that out so it don't get jabbed into my elbow. I'll do just a little bit of scraping here to smooth up this face, and I'll know where my dimensions are. Still just a little rough. This cutting edge is going to be pretty thin on the edge, but it's good to have a flat surface so you can get your dimensions are close. I think I'll go ahead and take a little bit of the material out inside the pocket at this point. about 2.6 on the diameter, and I believe 2.750 is what I shoot for, which will, by the time you start tapering the inside and the outside, you'll get real close to that dimension. Now I need to work the pocket down, the large pocket. Here's a new tool that's sort of made for this kind of cut. You go in, you're cutting the face here and you cut an angle at the same time, but I've not used it enough to be really sure of it, but we're going to give it a shot today. Of course, the Doughnut doesn't really care whether it's 2.5 or 2 3/4 diameter, so it's whatever you'd like to make it. Need to put just a little more taper. I'm a little flat right in the bottom 1/4 inch. I'm going to put just a little more taper in there, and then we'll go back.
Which way is it tapering?
It's tapering this way, and then of course the outside will taper in to get the cutting edge. But I'm a little flat in the side. If the donuts and the cookies are powdered good, they shouldn't stick in there. My wife told me that's key. Yeah. There we go. Now we're tapered. And we'll work on the outside level. I think I'll stick my live center in. It'll make it a little more stable and keep the cutting edge circumference pretty stable. We don't really want it wobbling too much. I'm going to go to the skew here to work this edge down. I've always have the thought that if I use that bowl gouge, I'll roll over the edge and mess up the cutting edge, so I figure there's less chance of using the skew here to scrape off the edge. A little bit more material out. Now we're going to put a feature in these two holes on the sides, and they're called vent holes. But I always look at it as possible. If you get a donut stuck in there, you can stick a toothpick or a small straw or something through there to push it out.
Skewer sticker.
Yeah, but they call them vent holes, so we'll continue to call them vent holes. It's a little close on deciding where to put everything, but with a little luck we'll put that feature in right now. You've got to keep an eye out because you can run into your handle, so you've got to put it in at an angle. Got the biscuit cutter, but you're actually sending it through there,
Hold it up a little bit.
okay, at an angle,
Well,
so it misses the handle area, and then it doesn't run into your pocket on either side. Is that all right? So what I try to do is put a couple marks to work from. And then if you can, to get it straight across so it'll look good. I know the donut won't care whether it's centered and even, but I do. A little prick at each spot to hold that drill bit in place. Start in straight, then start angling it. Made it. Plenty of angle. In fact, it's a little further out than my example. We'll take just a little bit more off this, and then we're going to switch over to making the little cup that goes in here. The reason you want that pocket in there first is you can't see it, but I have the pocket there a little bigger than what this one is, so you have to compensate when you make the cut for there. So you want it to fit where it'll press in. And I think we'll just switch over and start on that. We'll leave this right in the chuck. And this block is approximately 1.5 by 1.5 inches. Shoot for about 1.25 inches for my small chuck I'm going to use. And this is the piece we're shooting for. And it has a 1/4 inch hole running through it for the pusher rod to go through, so we'll be putting that in. All of it. I'll drill it, put the little pocket in it. Just a clearance hole for the pusher rod to go through. I'm using the Forstner bit again to put the roughed out pocket in, a little cup. We're shooting for the 900 on that. 875 would probably be plenty close for 7/8. Yeah, on this portion, I'll be cutting the taper on the inside and outside, and to leave a cutting edge. Then I'll turn this back side of the block down to match the pocket in the last part that I just turned. This one's a little smaller than this one will need to be, but I turn those to where they'll match. Now we're going to show how to turn the rod. Turn it out of a piece of block, approximately 3/4 square. Of course, the person could use a dowel, but I wanted to continue using cherry wood, so I'm basically making my own dowel. And we'll turn between centers here. We'll go back to the small roughing guides to start out. This thin a piece, you want to take it easy. Start with it, you start getting it around. working to make right there. See, I've got the cup, ball, and the pusher rod. To make the little ball for the end of the pusher rod, I'm going to turn it out at the piece of cherry, and I've got a reducer set there to hold a 3/4 inch block. We'll get it roughed out, and then we'll drill a hole pocket in one end. My little fixture is one that's used by a lot of people, and it really works out good for this instance. Is just 2 blocks, I believe they're 2x2s, and you can put whatever size hole, square hole that you want for your block. And on this one I had to add a little shim on one side because it wasn't gripping it, because I was slightly under the 3/4. But it holds that block inside a large chuck. You can put it any size chuck you have, and use up pieces. It works really good for making this little tiny ball. Now this I'm going to hand feed it in because we're not wanting to go very deep. We want about approximately a 1/4 inch deep pocket. And when I finish the pusher rod aisle, I'll check and make sure it fits on here. If you leave it slightly big, it will work just fine. Here's one. Spare one I had. See, I'm a little oversized on this rod. But
Why does that need to come off?
Well, if you want to take it apart and clean it.
Or can the plunger base come off?
Well, the plunger is glued to the
Oh, all right.
to the rod. It's glued permanently. This is the only thing that'll come off.
Okay.
Of course, there'll be something that'll be easy to lose too. So a person might want to go with a longer egg-shaped one, but a little bit of sandpaper will do wonders, smoothing it up and making it look good. It didn't take much for such a small feature. They're easy to lose, they're pretty small. Especially if you made a little mountain of chips there at your feet. And there's the smallest feature on the whole project. The whole assembly, what I've been using is walnut oil. It's supposed to be a very reliable finish. cures in a couple days hard. And Mahoney's is one of the, I guess, most used walnut oils there is. You can see it there. Comes in a 16-ounce bottle, and it's pretty reasonably priced, and it lasts for a long time. You can coat a lot of projects. It's food safe and shouldn't leave any kind of residue on your biscuits or your donuts. And it really enlightens the finish on a lot of the woods, that oil finish from Mahoney's. Of course, says you wipe these off with a wet rag and dry them off. You don't want to throw them in a pan of water and soak, or it can be ruined in just probably a matter of minutes or hours, because even though it has a finish on it, it'll cause it to deteriorate. So it's an item that you want to not over soak or clean. Definitely don't want to put in a dishwasher. And that's the project.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. Thank you.